All right, welcome back to Wandering in the Wilderness. We're going to keep going with Exodus 16. I'm going to read through some verses and we're going to focus on how much manna the people got. Moses said to them, "It is the bread the Lord has given to you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. Each one is to gather as much as he needs. Take an omer for each person you have in your tent." The Israelites did as they were told. Some gathered much and some little. And when they measured it out by the omer, he who gathered much did not have too much, and he who gathered a little did not have too little. Each one gathered as much as he needed. Then Moses said to them, "No one is to keep any of it until morning." However, some of them paid no attention to Moses. They kept part of it until morning, but it was full of maggots and began to smell. So Moses was angry with them. Each morning, everyone gathered as much as he needed, and when the sun grew hot, it melted away.
So what God's doing here, God provides for Israel, really based on, I think, the Goldilocks Principle. Yeah, it's not too much, and it's not too little. I'll tell you, there was a time in my life when I really, really loved buffets. I essentially I saw them as a wager. I'll bet I can eat more food than you're pricing this for. And, I've kind of outgrown that. I've learned that no matter what, it's not a good bargain. The food isn't necessarily that good. You kind of would probably be better off having a good meal that ends as opposed to the buffet. Here, it's not a buffet. It's not that thing where your eyes are bigger than your stomach. God says, go out every day. For every person, collect this much. And it's enough. It's enough. God's grace is sufficient. God's provision is sufficient. It is enough to fill, but it is not enough to overwhelm. I think the people here in Israel and us, if we're honest, have this temptation to hold on to what God has provided. Certainly, this is something that they had learned in Egypt. Who was Pharaoh but the guy who had the big storehouses of grain? Who was Pharaoh but the guy who had everything that he could ever possibly want? Who was Pharaoh except for the richest guy in Egypt? That could be you if you just collect all of this manna. I don't think you'd ever have time to collect that much manna. But the issue here is that the sin there is kind of based in a lack of trust. The sin there is about, God provided today. But what if God doesn't provide tomorrow? I'd better hold on to a whole bunch just to make sure. And yet God provides for today, for tomorrow, and for all of our lives and for eternity.
But I think that's part of the transition. I think that's where it's hard. They're still learning to depend on God. They still turn around and grumble at Moses and Aaron at any turn when it's not what they expect and not what they're used to, and not the way where they're in control of things. They're giving up control to follow into the wilderness, not knowing where they're going, not knowing exactly how they're going to get there, not knowing how all their needs will be met. Now God is trying to tell Moses to reassure the people, but they're still fearful. They still don't believe in it. They still don't trust in it. So this is still part of the transition. And on the first day out, who among us, if we're honest, wouldn't have just said, okay, I'm going to get as much as I can just to make sure that this is going to provide for my family. I don't want to look at the face of my children when they're hungry. I don't want to worry about that. So I'm going to take it on myself. But God is slowly trying to teach them, and maybe even us, a new lesson, and that it can look different. We can look just to God for what God provides and knowing that it will be sufficient in all we need. But that is a lesson that's hard to learn. And I think that's what they're experiencing. They're experiencing the grumbling and the growing pains and the not being able to trust and not being able to rest easy, knowing that God is going to provide and take care of everything. And as it says in the scripture, some paid no attention to Moses. That's you and I. That's me. That's what we do. We don't always hear God's voice giving us the clear instruction and just follow without thinking it through. We jump to our own conclusions. We make our own plans. We go in our own direction, wanting to provide the way we envision it should happen. Because only the way we think about it is the way it should happen, right? God had a different plan, and God was teaching them a new way of life. That's hard. I mean, that is difficult. There's nothing easy about this journey. So if we hear anything, I think at this point, wandering in the wilderness is just a difficult place to be. And even when they see the flaky substance that they just can't decide what it is, even when they see it all in front of them and they taste it and, hey, it's not so bad, they still are ready to go the next stage and just grab as much as they can. They can't just be satisfied in the moment. And again, if we really reflect on where we are today, I think we're just the same.
Gluttony is about more than food. Just anything that we can be gluttons of. What is it that we hold on to? What is it that we believe that we desperately need and that we would, just die without? What are those things that maybe would be wormy in the next day? Those are the things that kind of God is showing us that God has provided, but that we need to trust God to continue to provide. Those are the things that God has given us, but they are not permanent things. They're temporary things. They're things for today, and there will be more for tomorrow. And there will be plenty for us throughout our lives.
And maybe that's the question for us today. What is that thing for you? What is the thing that you're tempted to need above God and above anything else? Maybe that's our question for today. See you tomorrow.